All right, jumping over to the vol side, realized vol bouncing by about 8 points on Bitcoin as spot broke back above 100K. Ethereum realized doubled though from like 45 to 90. Unbelievable. So Ethereum obviously came alive, ripping 30% in 2 days. And you've seen that orange line jumping massively. Implied vols did spike, but they haven't really managed to keep pace with what the realize has done, right? They've got faded fairly quickly. So that's why you've got this deep negative carry of over 20 vol points in Ethereum, and you've got about a neutral carry sitting on Bitcoin where implied and realized are equal. Front end vols on Bitcoin actually didn't do that much. They drifted slightly by a couple of points, but front end vols on ETH were up about 20 points. So really, really crazy move there on ETH. Mentioned the carry. If you look at the OHLC charts, you can see you had one breach to the upside when we broke 100K, but every other day has been pretty orderly on Bitcoin, hence why the implied vols aren't doing much. But if you look at ETH, we got that massive breach on the first day, but then again it went and again it went. So 3 days in a row, just smashing to the upside the implied ranges, and that is why you've had this re-rating in Ethereum volatility once again. It appears that Bitcoin may be passing the baton over to Ethereum. Let's see how long it lasts. I'm not sure. I'm a believer yet, even though the move has been pretty brutal. I mean, I am long ETH, right? I'm not. I've probably hedged about half of my ETH out right here, right now, because I've got the wheel strategy running, and I did some covered calls in the wheel strategy, and those have gone blasting through strike. So I've essentially had half my ETH parked in the wheel strategy, and the covered calls we've gone through strike, deeply through strike. So those are effectively neutralized. But I've still got half my ETH holdings elsewhere, right? So happy to ride this ETH rally if it wants to go to the moon and go to 3,000. But for now, my wheel strategy has been kind of taken out of its exposure. And what I'm planning to do is start selling puts to start bringing some premium back in the other way around on the wheel. But I'll do a quick video on the wheel to talk a bit more detail about that later on for the subs in the Discord. Okay, here's the term structures. You can see, still in contango on Bitcoin, no real move on the week, but obviously the move in Ethereum where we flipped from contango back to inversion on such a big realized move is pretty normal when you see those type of moves. Here's your kind of time series. You can see that front end really getting whacked in the last day or so on Bitcoin, where they're hammering that stuff back down to like 40 vol and below. And then we got that big inversion on Ethereum, but it has started to normalize, and the curves, whilst it's still inverted, it's given back a decent amount of its inversion. Looking at skew, chopping around, but skew still residing in that 2 to 3 vols for Bitcoin in call premium. And then Ethereum's a bit funny. The longer dates are still sitting there in call premium, although the call premium is reducing slightly. But like those short end that were definitely in put premium have had a little pop, particularly the absolute front end has had a bit of a pop. And you can see that here in our skew term structures as they flattened out. Bitcoin's flattened out to 2 to 3 vols across the curve. Ethereum, absolute fronts there is, we're talking about end of this week stuff is definitely in a call premium because of what we've seen. But actually, if you go 1-2 weeks out and then even out to sort of June, July, we're still in a put premium. So that's interesting. Given the explosive 30% rip we've had, the fact that we're still in put skew in Ethereum, it's basically the options market saying, yeah, we're not so sure about this. We think this is a short squeeze, but we don't necessarily think ETH is just going to completely re-rate to the upside now. And you would have expected a bit more of a call premium after the kind of move we see. So we have seen a shift higher. Well, you can see here, we've seen a bit of a shift lower actually in longer dated skew. We've seen a bit of a shift lower. It's only that absolute front end that's gone completely ballistic. Okay, which I find that quite interesting, right? Maybe it's a case of on that huge spot move, we've seen a bit of taking profit, like a bit of call selling, basically that has pressured that long end down a bit, basically, right? That's the only way I could really rationalize why that skew has moved down in the face of such an aggressive rally. Okay. And yeah, I mean, I think it might also be that at the money vols have spiked so much. So if you're at the monies are spiking a lot, then maybe the upside strikes don't need to trade as much of a premium because you're at the monies are just so rich anyway, right? So there may be some of that as well on what's going on. Anyway, we may, if Ethereum can attack 2,800, then we may start to see a call bid shifting over to Ethereum, right? So we're not seeing that right here, right now. So the options market is kind of skeptical about this rally. But if we did start to continue to see upside in Ethereum, then you might start to see Bitcoin calls kind of fading a bit in favor of Ethereum, basically, because there is a lot more catching up to do if you look at the charts, if you look at the long-term charts. And on the relative value basis, you can see here the front end has moved up to 35. So it's a 35 vol spread between Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's about as wide as it really gets. I can't really remember seeing it much wider than that. But as you look, the back end has barely budged. It's still at 15. So last week I had said I thought 15 was probably a sell on the long end, and the fact that we had this ridiculous move and it hasn't even moved probably confirms that it's a good sell, right? Because as long as you're not short loads of gamma on ETH, right, the that Vegas spread has not actually moved against you at all, right? So long end still looks like it might make sense to be a seller of ETH, buyer of Bitcoin at this type of spread level. This ETH BTC spread after a 33% rally, this cross rate is now sitting on that key downtrend at 0.025. So that's a key one to watch, whether it can break that or whether it rejects that level there. And then Ethereum skew, you can see here, showing a bit more of a put premium relative to Bitcoin. Again, another way of observing that the options market not really buying into this idea that this ETH move is very sustainable, basically, right? So maybe there was too many shorts built up. They needed to be squeezed out. But if the market thought this was a sustained rally, you would expect this blue line to be trading above, well above zero, and showing us that, people are willing to pay a premium for Ethereum calls, which they don't appear to be right now relative to Bitcoin. All right, guys, that is your vol summary for crypto this week. It's been a pretty interesting one, I have to say. It's basically set the cat amongst the pigeons on Ethereum for sure. I'm lucky. I'm all right with the fact that I had the crypto wheel on, so I had some covered calls on, but I didn't have any short gamma risk, thank God, in Ethereum, because anyone who was short gamma is probably licking their wounds pretty badly right now. All right, guys, I'll catch you same time next week. Cheers.
Hi everyone. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. Remember, this is just a little taster of what we do at Options Insight. To get access to all our research, including my in-depth vol market insights and a whole lot more, you can sign up at options-insight.com. I'll see you soon.